Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Tommy D. Duncan III, your host and co-host for Black Men Speak. It is Wednesday, August the 23rd, 2023. And if it is Wednesday night, it is definitely Black Men Speak. My co-host Jimmy Stewart will be joining us momentarily. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and start tonight's show. First, before we get started, we would like to acknowledge Liquid for our theme music. Thank For Us Films for our virtual studio. And if you've not done so already, please subscribe, like, and share this show with others. We will be monitoring the chat window. So we'd like to welcome everyone tonight to the show. And we are looking forward to a great show, jam-packed as always. So without being said, let's go ahead and start tonight's show. First, we are going to start off with acknowledging a couple of folks that we have lost over the past month in August of this year, and a couple of birthdays as well. So let's go ahead and get the show started. Many of you, if you like TV and or watch a lot of TV, you may know this face here. Ron Cephas Jones. He is a stage actor, just passed August 19th of this year, and best known for his role as William Hill in the drama series This Is Us, that lasted for about 6 years, but he had several other TV roles, including a role in Mr. Robot, The Get Down, and Truth Be Told, in addition to a couple of films across the universe, Dog Days, and of course, one of my favorites, Dolomite Is My Name. So we would definitely like to acknowledge and honor Mr. Jones for what he has contributed, not just in the area of entertainment, but to our community as well. Next, we would like to spend some time and take a few minutes to acknowledge another great in the political sphere. That is Miss Sheila Oliver. She was the Lieutenant Governor of New Jersey, just passed on August 1st of this year. She was the first Black woman to serve as Lieutenant Governor of New Jersey, and was also the first woman of color elected to a statewide office in New Jersey. So we, of course, like to honor and acknowledge her, and of course, prayers to her family as well. And last, but definitely not least, for those of you who are in the legal sphere, some of you might know this face and this name, Mr. Charles Ogletree, who is an attorney and a professor at Harvard Law School. He was a legal scholar, and he passed early this month on August the 4th, 2023. Served as the Jesse Clemenko Professor at Harvard Law School. Also was the founder of Harvard's Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice, and was the author of several books. So again, honor and acknowledgement to Mr. Ogletree, and of course, our condolences to his family. But what we'll also do, as Jimmy has joined us back, is we will acknowledge a couple of birthdays. Jimmy, we'll start off with one of my favorite actresses, the great Miss Loretta Devine, who has been in a ton of films. Her birthday was actually a couple of days ago on August the 21st. She was in a ton of films, including
films.
Exactly. This Christmas, Dreamgirls. If you watch TV, film, you've seen this beautiful face out there, just really making even what we would consider to be B movies much better.
Yes.
And finally, on today's date, we have one of the greats in sports and entertainment, the late, great Kobe Bryant, who, of course, we lost too early just a couple of years ago in 2020. Today, of course, was his birth date, and of course, his fans and fans of the NBA all over the world sorely miss him and his presence. So, Jimmy, those are our birthdays and our acknowledgments for today.
Okay. Yes, Tommy, I was slightly delayed in joining the show. thanks to our government who does their best to keep me down. But uh, as you can see, I still prevail no matter what they throw at me. So
Gotcha.
every Wednesday they attack me.
Yeah. So anyway,
Uh,
Jimmy, we will go ahead on to news and briefings, Jimmy. And first, we're going to start off with actually a young lady that you brought to my attention a week ago, who opened her own banking
Actually,
institution.
Tom, before we get started, I want to give
Sure.
a shout out um, and encourage everyone to read the book Charter Schools by Walter Williams. Very good book. If you haven't read it already, and I love his books, Tom, because his research is impeccable. The arguments that he make are sound, and he just lays out a really solid argument for his positions. And you don't have to worry about him trying to brainwash you or trying to go through any propaganda that he's trying to push down. I mean, this is just a person who's just a pure researcher, and like I said, his books are very sound. I love all his books. So this is the one I just read. So I encourage everyone to go out and check it out. But go ahead.
All right, Jimmy, we will now begin to talk about our news brief for the day. Ms. Benatha Poole Watson, who is the CEO of a bank relatively new called Prime One Lending Group and Home Loans out of the Arlington, Texas area.
Yeah, it's not a retail bank like you normally think of, but it is a banking institution for lending. I think they specialize in real estate
Yes, they do.
lending. So, but and if I'm correct, she's been able to generate about $500 million of capital lending power. So, I mean, it's a pretty remarkable feat for what she's done, Tom. But we need more people like her if we're going to come up out of this hole that we're in. We need to stop complaining about what we don't have and who's not giving us money, and believing that we have a problem with access to capital. It may mean that we need to risk our own capital to come up. So I'm very proud. When I saw this article, I was like, I got to send this to Tom because we got a feature on our show.
No, she has a great story. Jimmy has overcome a lot of odds. She was born in South Central LA in the Crenshaw area. I think her parents are of Guatemalan and African American descent. I think her father was African American. Her mother was Guatemalan. And at 19, she became a mom and was working, 50 plus 60 hours a week, trying to make ends meet with a lot of jobs from the military to a flight attendant, and went into the real estate business, Jimmy, and is now acknowledged as one of the top 1% of realtors in America, and has a long series of selling, I think, somewhere in the range of 400 homes per year, which I can't even imagine. But through her network, has sold over 400 homes a year, recognized as an investor, developer, and a builder of custom homes. And as she mentioned, she is opened a institution as a direct lender that's been Fannie Mae approved. I think she funds up to 3 million for home loans and 650 million for commercial loans. And Jimmy, she kind of, even though she's been a real estate person for a long time, she actually was approached at a conference she was speaking at, and had one of the attendees talk to her about opening up a bank, and the rest was history. And so she had opened this lending institution in 2021. So it's just a couple years old, but again, homegrown, locally based, and providing opportunities to those who may not have gotten it otherwise.
Well, Tom, I mean, we've heard this story before. South Central LA, 19-year-old mother, working a lot of jobs. So she's not supposed to be where she is, but yet she's there.
Correct.
And this just goes to show, and this is my message, is that no matter what people tell you that you can't do, and no matter what lane that you're in that people tell you that you can't get off of, I'm pretty sure when she had aspirations and dreams to do more with her life, that there were folks who told her that she couldn't do it, that there would be people out there, there'd be white people out there, racist people out there that are going to stop you. They're not going to let you get to that level. But yes, she got there, Tom. You know why? Probably because she didn't listen to the naysayers. And so we have to stop believing what everyone tells us about what we can't do and realize that if we put our minds to it, there's very little that we can't do. And so we always highlight remarkable people on this show all the time, Tom. And part of that reason is to encourage people not to feel as though they can't do it. You know, if you set your mind to it, if you're willing to work hard enough for it, to go out there and make it happen, you can make it happen. With a little luck in life and a little with God behind you and a little luck, there's a good chance you're going to get there. But if you don't try, you'll never get there.
Very true. And that's where it starts, Jimmy, putting one foot in front of the other, falling down several times and getting back up at least one time more than you're falling down on the ground.
Yes.
So, we definitely, of course, and wish her the best of luck. She's been successful for a career, has done a ton to help the community, Jimmy. And of course, we wish her the best of luck, and we hope that people will support her in terms of what she is doing so that she's empowered to help other people,
Yes.
especially folks who may not have gotten that opportunity with the traditional lender.
Well, Tom, she's looked like she started off life with not a lot of opportunity being afforded to her.
Correct.
So sometimes you have to go out and make your blessing. You have to go out and make and open your own doors by making it happen. So yeah, she's one of our local heroes. We wish her the best of luck, and people, please look to her for inspiration. Go read up on her, and if you're looking for a home, seek her out. We've had several realtors on this show, so maybe we'll get a chance. Maybe we can get her on the show.
Yeah, no, that would be a great opportunity. And we will go ahead and move forward. Before we move forward with our next story, we'd like to acknowledge those who have jumped on the chat line already. We have Dominique Bowman out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. We definitely have to welcome her. Thank you for joining us, my good friend. We have Audrey K. Booker, who is out of the Dallas area. Good evening to you, Audrey K.
Miss Booker.
Yes, sir. Brother Ed Gray, the commish.
The
On the
commish.
Commish radio show every Saturday. You have
Yes.
to check out the commish radio show. And thank you for joining us this evening. Miss
It's,
Bonnie Scott, the world traveler. Miss Bonnie Scott, thank you for joining us this evening, and good evening to you as well. And Armanda Brown out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Feel free to offer your comments, your thoughts, and your questions on the chat line. And we'll look forward to moving forward with the show. I want to thank you, of course, for your support. Another story, Jimmy, that I would like to present that I think you would have an interest in. It was a guy out of the Detroit area who has now, I think, released his ninth film that you can see on Amazon Prime or Tubi. And
okay.
we had a gentleman who was actually on our show last month, I think it was, who was an independent filmmaker. And so this gentleman here, his name is Quinde. I hope I'm not getting his name wrong, but it's pronounced Quinde Reed. And not only has he made his ninth film as an independent filmmaker, Jimmy, but he was formerly incarcerated as well. I believe that he did a little time for a weed rap, but you know what? He decided to make a difference in his life, not just in his life, but in his community. And he embraced the filmmaking industry to help his community and provide aspiring actors a chance to pursue their dreams by getting on the screen. And so, with the likes of Amazon Prime and a lot of these other streaming video platforms, Jimmy, I mean, you don't have to be a MGM or Metro Goldwyn Mayer or
Correct.
something like that in order to make quality films. And quite frankly, Jimmy, it is on us as a community to support and uplift filmmakers who are telling constructive stories about our community, overcoming the odds, and really inspiring our youth to make the greatest usefulness of themselves. I think some of his films, One More Flip, Cheddar Boys, in 5 minutes, I believe the platform that he used, he's the founder of Cheddar Boy Films, which is based in Detroit, Michigan.
Yes, we need more people like him, Tom. We are definitely underrepresented when it comes to the movie industry. And once again, we cannot count on Hollywood to tell our stories or to fund our stories. And so when we have young men that we've chronicled on this show, the one last month and now this one. We need more people to get out there and either get involved in the movie making industry or invest in it. These people need to raise capital to make their movies. They need larger budgets, so don't be afraid to invest in a film to help make it happen. But very proud, Tom. Once again, a person with a drug rap or incarceration, generally you don't expect these people to somehow turn it around and become successful in life. So I'm glad to see that whatever mistakes he made, poor judgment in life, he didn't let that prevent him from reaching his goal of doing what he really wanted to do. Which I'm glad to see. I mean, 9 films is pretty remarkable,
Yes.
and so I hope he makes 100 more before he checks out. So, and with every film, it's going to get a little better.
Yeah.
So now may be the time, people, to find a way to reach out to this brother and invest with him because it could be the next Tyler Perry on the rise here.
Right. And the thing about it, Jimmy, is that one of the things that we've discussed over several of our shows is that we have to take control of the narrative and the image that is projected of our
Yes,
communities. Long over is the time for other folks to be telling our stories. And as
long
you,
over.
and as you've said on so many different occasions, you have to start small and grow from there, whether it's self-funded or whether you get family funding or whatever your sources are, Jimmy. We have to own and control our stories, number one. And number two, we have to stop putting our money into communities, into businesses and platforms that are not being constructive and uplifting our community.
Tom, we pour hundreds of millions of dollars each week into Hollywood films. We're the number one consumers
Mhm.
of the big screen, and so some of that money we need to divert to supporting our own filmmakers. So I wish we had a platform where they can monetize the viewing. I mean, I know right now going through Tubi and other streamers is a way, but let's find a way to find them and support them. I mean, I like Tubi; they have a huge library of black films, so they're one of the better streamers out there. So if you can go out to this Tubi and check the brother film out, write
So
a
let me ask you
comment.
this. I mean, I'm not as familiar with Tubi. I've watched a little Netflix and a couple of other platforms, but I'm not as familiar with Tubi. So for those of our listeners out there who may not be familiar with it, like me, tell us a little bit about Tubi, how you access to it, and tell us a little bit more about it.
Generally, I have Roku at home, and so it's one of the options on Roku. But they are just a streaming site. So whatever, whether you use the Fire Stick from Amazon or Roku or some other streaming platform, they most likely will have Tubi as an option. So Tubi is just a streaming site that offers live shows and a huge library of movies, but it's free. So
Hmm.
yeah. So if you're gonna add something to your streaming library, definitely add Tubi. You won't be disappointed. And when I know for like they have a black section,
Mhm.
and with every section or category of films, they have a minimum of 250 that they display. So when you go to the black section, Tom, I mean, films from that will go back to the 60s and 70s,
Oh,
all the
really?
classics. Yeah.
So
Oh,
you're
yes.
talking about Uptown Saturday Night?
Yes, you can find it, Tom. Plus a lot of, I mean, there's every weekend I go out there to try to look for something I haven't seen. But they have a huge library of black films and other movies also if you're into the classics. But definitely go out there and stream Tubi. Let's support this brother. If you can, write in or give him a positive comment. So Tubi and others will be encouraged to buy his future films.
How does that work, Jimmy, in terms of sending the message to the folks who control the platform that you either need a broader array of films or that you're supporting a specific genre of films or whether it's specific filmmakers?
Well, generally, if you with the streaming services, they capture so much information about their viewers. So, one, if you just go out there and click on the film, they're going to know sort of who you are and what your background is and what your demographics are. But if you hit the like button, or if you can give the brother a positive comment, also that would be a much help. But just watching his film and give him the hit numbers will help.
Gotcha. Now that sounds great. We'd like to welcome a couple of other guests who are on the chat line. Miss Adrian Burgess good friend of ours. And
Yeah, Adrian in the house. Okay.
thank you for listening to us tonight. In addition to Celia Reese, good evening to you as well, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Welcome, Cecilia.
And then, of course, the Frederick D. Roberts Esquire, uh, of course, on the show tonight. Of course, he is a consummate supporter of our show. And then, of course, my good friend and uh, brother Asar Al Kabelan out of the Austin area, who is a hooker crook. He's on the show unless he has a commitment. So we want to thank brother Asar Al Kabelan of the African Genius podcast.
And I still haven't seen his podcast. Did you ever send me the link?
Oh, okay. I will send that to you. It is on YouTube. So you can look it up, African Genius Podcast, but I can, of course, forward it to you as well. And, of course, he does a show with a brother out of South Africa.
Okay.
So definitely something that you need to check out and support as well.
And make sure we support the radio show of the commission. He has a great show.
Yes, he does.
So I like it.
All right. Next, Jimmy, we have another inspiring story. This is actually a story that we may have covered before, Jimmy, but a young lady who previously made headlines for becoming the youngest Black person to be accepted into medical school at 13 years old.
We did cover it.
Exactly. She graduated, and this is after graduating from high school at 12, but now she is about to graduate from Arizona State University at 14 years old with a bachelor's degree. Miss Alina McCourt.
Well, Tom, once again, we highlight these exceptional people, and yes, proud young lady. So we highlight these exceptional people, Tom, and I think this goes to show what our kids are capable of doing. And so we have to stop listening to those who tell us that our kids cannot learn, they cannot excel, that they're not as smart as the Asian kids. If you focus their attention and give them the challenge and let them know that here's my expectation for you to overachieve, for you to be the smartest at the top of your class, our kids are capable of doing this, Tom. And we highlight these kids all the time on this show and show what they're capable of doing. And her brain doesn't work any different than the average brain of any Black boy or girl in our communities. The difference is, Tom, is the kids that we highlight and focus on this show all focus their attention on achieving excellence. And so they don't know they're not supposed to outperform their white counterparts or their Asian counterparts. They just go out there and do it. I mean, we've highlighted so many kids graduating school from early. Then the other common thing, Tom, is that a lot of these kids are not in public school, except for the one girl down in Florida who graduated top of her class, and her family was homeless. I don't know if you remember that story.
I do remember that.
But most of the kids that we show on there are not in public school. They're homeschooled or charter school. So go out and read the book by Walter Williams on charter schools, and where he talks about the problems of the public school system. And either we're going to reform the public school system by getting more involved and deciding who's running our schools, or we need to start promoting the charter schools, or if you can, educate your children at home. Yeah, but those public schools are not serving our interests at all.
Yeah, Jimmy, and I think that we have to look at them as institutions. When I say that, the school district, public schools, is an institution. If we look at mass media, it is an institution, whether we're talking about the news or your regular entertainment channels on television. If we look at cable, all those types of things, they are institutions. And I think the key is this, when kids don't know what they don't know, they just perform based upon expectations. And this is, even we talked about this last week or so when we had Dr. Feltus on here. And,
Yes.
the parents set the expectation that, you are going to perform to the best of your ability. And I think that a lot of times our children, unfortunately, are allowed to consume too much traditional TV programming,
Way too much
TikTok,
too much
dysfunctional social media, too many images, Jimmy, that don't really send a message that you are great, that you are brilliant. that you are capable of doing anything. I think before our kids even have a chance, many of them before they even go to school, consume so much television, which the parents have to check that they are already receiving the unconscious programming that they are incapable, that math and science is difficult, that they're not able to achieve. They see other groups doing great things, but they don't see themselves doing great things. And I think that's because of the implicit subliminal messaging in a lot of the mass media that they are consuming.
No, Tom,
On,
you are
on, on, on
absolutely
average
right
to
on
eight,
point.
on average to 8 to 10 hours a day,
I
Jimmy.
know it's way too much, Tom. I mean, you factor in 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of television, and then 8 hours of school. I mean, where's the study, homework, and the other things that you need to do to prepare your brain? And I was going to say this, Tom, is that I mean, some people think I'm a little bit of a racist, and maybe I am, but black people here in America are the descendants of God's chosen people. You know, we are the original people on this planet. We populated the world. There's no one faster
Well,
than us.
that,
There's no
that,
one
that, is,
smarter than us.
that is scientifically a fact.
Yes, there's no one faster than us. There's no one smarter than us. There's no one that can endure the hardships globally better than us. We've adapted to every place on this world. The other humanoids that existed when we came to a territory all died out, Tom, for either disease or weather or who knows what. But the only reason that you have a human race today because the big brain African left the continent of Africa and populated the world mixed with other humanoids around the world, which allowed them to survive. Otherwise, they would have died out. Their species wouldn't have been able to survive. And so, Tom, we cannot listen to folks who tell us that we're inferior to anyone. We're not. So, if you don't properly educate your children and motivate them for success, don't buy into that they can't do this, they can't learn, they can't outcompete other kids because they can. And one other thing, Tom, I know this is not really any scientific evidence, but within the Mensa Society, some of the super genius folks within that society are black. I mean, I look at the ones who have 200 plus IQs. I mean, just beyond genius level. I mean, all black. So this lets me know what black folks are capable of if we just stop being distracted by the influencers, by the institutions, by all those who don't want to see us go get ahead. Because really, I think in the end, the bigger picture, Tom, I think the rest of the world is afraid that black people may rise up one day and reach our full potential, and thinking that if we ever reach our full potential, that somehow we may seek to get revenge for all of the past history and things that have been done to us by others.
Yes, Jimmy. And, with that being said, that is the importance of knowing your history. And I know that there's a lot of political rancor behind what's going on in our state legislatures, even in the state of Texas with DEI. When you look at anti-CRT efforts throughout the country, regardless of what side of the political realm you're on, the key is your first education is always at home. As we always advocate, you should have your own library, regardless of what the schools are teaching. And quite frankly, Jimmy, we grew up with a lot of indoctrination focused textbook that really didn't tell the full story of our ancestors' contribution to the building of the greatest economy in the world. As parents, and as stakeholders and as mentors, we still have to take responsibility of ensuring that we have access to the information through the library or through buying our own books, because you're not going to get everything in your school libraries. And that, quite frankly, is
You'll
more
get very
so.
little in your school library,
It,
Tom. You're
it,
going to get
it,
very
yeah.
little in the public library unless you search for it. I mean, it may be hidden in behind some rows of books that are collecting dust. But also, Tom, we have to not be afraid to set the bar really high. This watered down curriculum you get in public school is designed basically to deliver an eighth grade education. I mean, that's what the state performance exams are based on. Can you read and write and do math at an eighth grade level? And so, Tom, we can't excel in college. We can't be the top of our class with an eighth grade education. So do not be afraid to push your kids. Do not let them come home with C's, D's, F's, and hell, like even B's are not even acceptable. They need to be focused on making A's.
Absolutely. But your parents, folks in the community, regardless of how well you did in school, I mean, your children are a new beginning and are a new life.
Sure.
They're the beginning of the first generation of the next generation of your family. And so you have to encourage them to do the absolute best. And where you set the standard, they're not going to fall too far from, Jimmy. I think that some children, some families are very fortunate. Their children may not have gotten a lot of reinforcement educationally, but they still are able to achieve at a high level. Maybe that's the influence of somebody else. Maybe they're just highly motivated individually. But for the majority of our children, they need that reinforcement. They need to have the bar set. And so that is why, when we have great stories like this, and I don't know very much about this young lady's background, but, regardless of whatever environment she came from, I mean, she graduated high school at 12. She's 13 going on 14, graduating college, about to go into medical school. I mean, this is a 13-year-old who is in school, in labs, conducting ovarian cancer research at the University of Maryland. She wants to research basically what she's doing is she's researching the effects of natural compounds and dietary foods. She's part of an American Cancer Society program that promotes diversity in cancer research. She's created a scholarship program called Brown STEM Girls to get young girls into STEM, that is the maths and the sciences.
Right.
And after
Technology,
she, and after she
engineering.
graduates from medical school, she's going to be pursuing a PhD in cancer research and want to study viruses. Jimmy, she's 13 going on 14 years old. That is outstanding.
Well,
And there is
Tom,
no,
you know
there's
what?
no reason. There is no reason that should not or could not be the norm.
Uh, Here's what I do know, Tom. Neither one of us has been in this girl's house, her environment. We know very little about her other than what we've researched and read. But here's what I pretty much know. I don't think her parents ever put her down, ever told her she was dumb or stupid. I'm pretty sure she was surrounded by positive voices that encouraged her to reach out her full potential. And once again, Tom, you are absolutely correct that if she can do this, there's no reason why other kids. Okay, and even if you don't graduate at 13, if you just graduate top of your class at 18, you fall a little short of her accomplishment. You're still a very successful student academically. And Tom, also, I mean, there was another young man we chronicled on this show and talked about who aced out the LSAT for
Yes,
law school.
correct.
I mean, something that I'm not sure if anyone else had done it or very, very few people have done it, but that's a huge accomplishment to get a perfect score. It's almost like getting a perfect score on the SAT scores, but this is for the law school entrance exam, the LSAT, and he got a perfect score. But Tom, this just goes to show, and I think he was a teenager. He wasn't even, I don't think he was over 18. He was still a teenager when he did this. And Tom, this is good. This shows what our kids are capable of doing if they're motivated and have the bar set really high. Because this young lady probably doesn't know that she's not supposed to do these things.
Correct.
She's just going out there doing it, having fun, learning, and I'm pretty sure getting lots of praise and encouragement. But she doesn't know that she's not supposed to do this, so she just goes out and do what she doesn't know that she's not supposed to do. So we need to focus our kids, all of our kids, to be doing the same thing. Tom, there's no reason why we can't. And this takes me back, Tom, to history. You talked about history, knowing our history. The very first black high schools in America were the Dunbar, Paul Dunbar High Schools. There were four of them, one in D.C., one in Baltimore, one in Kentucky, and one here in Fort Worth. And Tom, if you read the graduate list from these schools in the early 20s and 30s, it reads like the who's who of black history. And these were schools that were open for the grandchildren of former slaves. These kids didn't go to elementary school, they didn't go to junior high. Some of them went to a prep school to get into the high school, but a lot of them went directly into high school. And if you look at the charter, Tom, they opened these schools with setting the bar really high. Their goal was they wanted to compete and outperform the elite private schools on the East Coast. That was their goal. They weren't just trying to compete with other public schools. They wanted to outperform the elite schools on the East Coast, and they did this time up until the 1940s. There was only like one private school on the East Coast in D.C. that could outperform them, and they were so successful. I don't know if you remember that movie about the math teacher and teaching calculus down in South Central, where they thought that students were cheating because they all did so well on the advanced placement for calculus. But this was the same scenario with the Dunbar schools, that the educated a lot of systems that thought people that thought they were cheating, because surely the grandchildren of slaves could not outperform white kids and their white counterparts and excel that well. But this just goes to show, Tom, and this is why I feel the way I feel, that I don't make excuses for black kids. I know that we can do the work, Tom, if we put our effort into it. Same effort we put into sports, and the same effort we put in excelling at entertainment,
We've talked about this a lot, Jimmy, but
singing, dancing. I mean, we can be excellent in education also, and some of these kids that we highlight on this show prove that what we can do.
again, we've talked about this. I've stated this myself. If you take the number of students that are trying out and investing thousands of hours to perform at a high level on the basketball court, on the football field, or whatever athletic domain it is, and you take the same number of students and put that many hours into performing in the classroom, within one generation, I guarantee you, the story will be completely different in our communities, in our households, in our colleges, and quite frankly, in the business world.
Well, Tom, if that were to happen, one of the profound effects that we would notice is that we would need affirmative action for whites and Asians, because our kids would be dominating the elite schools of America.
I would agree with you on that, Jimmy. Before we go to the next story, we'd like to acknowledge a couple of other folks who joined the chat line. Ms. Chastity Christian, by the way, is a teacher as well, so she's out there motivating these kids to be the best they can. We have Ms. Tanya Hall, who has her own news and radio
That's
show
right.
Every day as well, on Monday through Fridays as well, KGGR. And then we have the counselor, Miss Elisa Patterson, who is in the Austin area out there.
Outstanding attorney.
Exactly. So we want to thank, of course, all of them for joining our show tonight. And it looks like we do have a comment from Miss Bonnie Scott. Says all black churches should offer something similar to Hebrew school, where all black youth are taught their history. There should be a standard curriculum and funding raised, just like in the building fund. Swahili school, that is, Swahili school for all black youth. And that is one of the, Swahili, of course, is one of the most common languages spoken throughout the continent of Africa. Very similar to, not on the same scale as, of course, English is throughout the world, but Swahili is probably one of the most common languages spoken on the African continent. So with that being said, Jimmy, let's go to our next story, Jimmy. And this is one that we need to, especially with schools starting back, folks to pay a little attention to and govern themselves accordingly. COVID rates are starting to go on the rise again, of course, as we hit the fall. You have cold season, you have flu season coming up, and there has been an increase over the last month or so in terms of the number of hospitalizations across the country, in terms of patients going in for COVID. And I believe between the last week, Jimmy, I think there was an additional 12,600 hospital admissions due to COVID, about a 21% increase to date. From 2020, when they started tracking this stuff, there have been about 103 million confirmed cases of COVID cumulative, and about 1.1 million deaths. A total of 668 million vaccine doses have been administered. And that's the real political conversation and calculus on this in terms of where the money is, Jimmy. But I guess the key thing is this: schools are starting back, not just at the Grumman High School level, but in college as well, Jimmy. And so what we're doing is we're wanting to make sure that parents and or folks who have responsibility for young folks are being very cautious in terms of taking protective measures, because COVID is not going anyplace. It's still out there. And, we have to focus on building.
Tom, COVID is going to join the the halls of the common cold, the flu.
Correct. You're absolutely
So this
correct.
is just going to be with us. But let me say this, Tom, from looking at the numbers, 12,000 cases among 360 million people is not
It's
a
very
lot.
small. It's very
Um,
small.
on
But
top of that, we have more people who are in the hospital because they've fallen than we have from the increase from COVID. And let me say this other thing, Tom, is curious to me that somehow we have a new strand of COVID. I mean,
three, three.
the, and Pfizer is already coming out with a vaccine. Except this time the government is not paying for it. You either pay for it out of pocket or with through insurance. But if I look at the European data, I mean, Germany has fully released all of their medical data on COVID. And here's the thing that I find really amazing because the CDC has not done that here in America with all of the data they collected. Tom, the Europeans report that not one healthy person that was in really good shape and healthy died from COVID in Germany. And so it looks like COVID still attacks people that are unhealthy. So do your absolute best to take precautions, wash your hands, do the same things you do during cold and flu season. Take precautions, social distance, but most importantly, try to eat better and exercise and get yourself in better shape because that seems to be the best treatment against COVID. Relying on the vaccine that may or may not work. We got so much misinformation about these very expensive and Tom, there's a reason why the billionaire class doubled their wealth during COVID because so much money went into the treatment, and I'm not sure we got much benefit out of it.
But Jimmy, they knew this, and of course, what you have to understand is that the wealthy have access to privileged information before everyone else does, and that's why I said do the political and economic calculus on what's happening here.
So just take precautions, live the best and the healthiest life you can, especially now. It really doesn't pay not to be not to work on your health because being unhealthy, suffering with diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, all these fatty liver, high cholesterol, with those things coupled with COVID, you really could find yourself in 6 feet under. So now's the time to really take your health serious because COVID is not going away. It's going to
Right,
be with us like the cold, the flu,
correct.
and some other diseases, viruses that we have to contend with all the time.
And by the way, Morris Brown, which is a HBCU in the Atlanta area, announced that this week that it's reinstating its mask mandate for the next 2 weeks, citing COVID primarily as the reason for that. And of course, it is also shutting down events of certain sizes, which means no big parties, things of that nature, until they get their hands around this with you know millions of students literally going back to school around the country as parents and as stakeholders that have responsibility for young people. You just have to be careful now that kids are going back to school. And I mean, the little ones, they're just
Well, tell them the
watching.
schools are going to be the first place they attack.
I know that.
And they're going to do the absolute best to try to shut the schools down again.
Hmm.
And we already know that when COVID was at its height, and they shut the schools down, that the kids have not recovered from that. Kids have lost 2 and 3 grade levels of learning. When we look at the national tests, when they test these kids who came out of COVID, they're 2 and 3 grade levels behind. So we've lost ground to COVID and
Correct.
shut down. So let's not let them do that again. And I think that's the aim again. And once again, these school shutdowns are designed to keep our kids uneducated. I mean, really, if the system wanted to educate kids, we'd have the most educated kids in the world. But that's
Yes.
not their goal. Their goal is to keep your kids uneducated, where they get all their news and information from the influencers and from celebrities who tell them what to think and how to think, so they don't think for themselves. So then you have a population that's controlled by that point. So we have to make sure that we don't fall into the trap. We're not going to let if they shut our schools down, Tom, then we need to take our
So
kids out of the school and
what's the
homeschool.
counterpunch? What's the counterpunch?
Homeschool, Tom. The schools are not serving our kids anyway.
But
So
Jimmy, this is what you got to deal with. There's a certain segment of parents who have the flexibility career-wise in order to do that. But a large majority of parents, and especially those within our communities that have service-related jobs, are not going to have the flexibility. We've already talked about this. A large number of our households are being run by a single parent, not dual parents. And a lot of those parents, especially in our communities, are in service related jobs where they cannot literally stay
But
at
Tom,
home
if you
and
can't
work.
homeschool, then we need to set up more charter schools. The black charter schools do a much better job of educating black kids than their public white counterparts. And on top of that, we just saw urban prep in Chicago get taken over by the system. And
Correct. We
Tom,
did cover
they had
that.
a 10-year track record of graduating 100% of their your black boys and sending them off to college. And 78% of those that went to college graduated. No other school in America, Tom, outside those Dunbar schools early on have not in my lifetime had that kind of track record. But this is what charter schools are capable of doing when we decide to set up our own schools and educate our kids ourselves. It's very unfortunate that Brother King got railroaded the way he did. They took over the school system, and now that accomplishment of what they were able to do has been lost. So we can't keep letting them push us into the public school system, Tom. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be insensitive, but these are our children. If you have children, you may have to make some sacrifices. You may have to take on a second job. You may have to pool resources with some other families, but we have to do whatever we have to do. Either homeschool our kids, sub charter schools, set up churches, set up tutoring at churches, whatever we have to do to educate our kids, Tom, is what we have to do. So we can't make excuses anymore about how inconvenient it is to do what we have to do. That's just not going to fly anymore because things are too grave now with too many of our kids falling behind. And now that they're pushing a COVID on us yet again with an effort to close down the schools. Our black kids were already behind before the schools closed. And they fell even further behind once the schools closed. And if they close the schools again, we're going to be the ones most affected by it, Tom.
Correct. Well, I mean, it's going to not just be black kids, but kids, within a
Well,
certain.
no, you're right. It's not. It's poor kids now.
I mean, whether you look at it, not just black kids, but kids who are in rural areas, who are in poor
Yes.
neighborhoods of every ethnic persuasion. So it's not just our kids, but our kids will be disproportionately affected by it for sure.
And let's just face it, Tom, the wealthy don't want to grow that fraternity or that sorority. That little club of theirs, they want to keep it exclusive to them. And they think they have a God given right to rule over the rest of us. And so give your child a fighting chance by making sure they have a good education, something that no one can take away from them. And if we fall into the trap of always following the instructions of our government, of our political leaders, of our influencers, our celebrities, our kids are going to always suffer and be falling behind. And you're right, it's not just black kids anymore. They've already done that experiment. They know exactly how to keep people depressed and suppressed. And so now it's for anyone who's not educated, who's not successful, and even for the ones who actually are working, who have a little income, most people are just a paycheck or two from being homeless.
Correct.
So we've got to really turn this around, Tom. We cannot buy into the status quo anymore. We got to go against the grain, and we got to be willing to do this and be bold, by making changes. For the sake of, if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for your children.
Great. And also have a couple of comments here from Miss Bonnie. When she was in Germany in 2021, she was surprised that Germany had free testing on almost every corner during when we had to go to do a testing site in the USA. So obviously Germany offered a much higher level of services. Also, Miss Councilor Patterson, I agree the kids have got behind, and it's sad it costed Bunny to get tested for hours of wait. But Jimmy, all that being said, for those who have kids who are back in school, going back to school, be careful. The reality of it is, unfortunately, we are probably one of the for an industrialized company, we are in the worst state of health, probably in the world, Jimmy, and that does not bode well when you have healthcare pandemics such as this. And so, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're doing things to protect our interests so that we can be around.
Well,
Not
Tom, it used to be that these things would cause you problems and cause death, and then we got to a point where we could medicate ourselves to counteract it. So losing weight, getting in shape, doing the things that we know we're supposed to do, eating right, got put on the back burner because we didn't have to do it. We have medicine now that can keep us alive, even though we're unhealthy. It'll still keep us alive. Now with COVID,
and the economics of that, Jimmy. is keep us alive so that the pharmaceutical companies can continue to make money
Well,
off of
Tommy, you're not going to
it.
cure diabetes. What you lose all
Oh,
your money stream.
Jimmy,
You're not going to cure high blood pressure. Uh,
Your
things,
lifestyle can cure that.
I know you can't. The lifestyle and diet can't cure that, Tom, but
Yes.
they
And
don't push.
that's what they don't want to talk about.
That's right.
Your
There,
lifestyle, getting
uh,
a
uh,
moderate amount of exercise, getting an adequate amount of sleep, changing your diet, even if that means you have to go vegetarian or vegan, if it means the quality of life when you get older.
my wife, who's a fitness consultant and healthcare consultant, has several clients who are doctors, and she's always telling me how they tell her that they can't even certain things they can't even talk about. So you can't talk about lifestyle anymore. You can't talk about eating better. You can't talk about walking, exercising. None of that. All you can do is talk about the medicine
Which is
that I'm going to
lunacy.
give you.
It's absolute lunacy.
So the rules are stacked against the medical profession to not talk about healthy lifestyle or alternative to all these medicines they push on you. No, I mean they're designed to just write the prescription, Tom, push the medicine for you to go out there and buy it to take it, and that becomes your avenue for staying alive. When really you can alter your lifestyle, lose weight, live a healthier lifestyle where you don't need the medicines. But we love our food, we love our sweets, our salts, we love living unhealthy, and we love taking our medicines to keep us alive.
Well,
But now with COVID, that wave is going to come every year, Tom, and you're going to see COVID death constantly, right up there with flu and colds, influenza and the common cold. Which Tom, when I was younger, I used to always be surprised when I would see the news and they would report like 50, 60,000 deaths from the cold or from the flu. I'm like, surely you don't die from the cold. I've had a cold before, but when you're unhealthy, these things will kill you. So when I was young and healthy and ignorant, I didn't know any better. But now as I've gotten older and having to fight for health, now I see that unhealthy lifestyle coupled with these viruses, Tom, even the common cold will kill you.
and Jimmy, what I thought was amazing is I was doing some research earlier today. If you look at the statistics globally, when it comes to the amount of deaths and the cases of COVID globally, do you know who was at the very bottom in terms of cases and deaths?
I think the Africans were.
By far.
In
The
fact, the numbers were so low, Tom, for a while, I thought if you were black, you couldn't catch COVID, that you had some pigment immunity to COVID, but obviously that wasn't true. But
their strategy and their intent for the will of their people was different than the European countries who saw it as an economic opportunity. The African continent saw it as a human capital issue. And so it is not even close when you look at the United States versus Europe versus Asia versus Africa. It's
Tom,
absolutely
you know what else they don't have? They don't have a plethora of fast food places either to poison them.
well, they're of course the Western powers are trying to do the best that they can
Well, I
to.
mean, the Europeans and especially the Asians are now adopting our fast food habits, and now they're developing the same health conditions and have to import the medicine to go with it. So,
Again, look at the political calculus. Look, follow the money. Who's making money off of this at the end of the day? And there are all of your answers, especially in this country. So without that being said, Jimmy, we are almost out of time. We have about 5 minutes, and we have a couple of maybe a story. We might not be able to get to the last one, but what I did want to do
oh, okay. What else
a,
would you have in the
a
pipeline?
quick follow up from last week when we talked about Niger and
Hmm.
of course, Western powers trying to channel through the other West African countries in order to try to isolate and boycott Niger. The African Union, which is the consortium of all African countries,
Yeah,
has
the
now
AU.
suspended Niger from all activities following what they are calling a coup in the country, which is actually one of the largest geographically on the African continent, told its members to avoid action that might legitimize what they're calling the junta. Otherwise, it seems real strange that they changed the lexicon when it comes to African countries. This is basically a military takeover because of what they feel was high treason by the president. At any rate, there's been no military action taken in Niger. And the coup has caused alarm among the Western allies and
Tom, there's
so-called
only alarm among the Western allies because of the disruption in the resources.
exactly,
But
and
military
that's
action
the
is what's
key.
going to be needed. Unfortunately, the economic boycotts and other sanctions placed on them is not going to hurt the people. And the
Yeah,
people,
I mean they're already among the poorest in the world, Jimmy.
and
They're not going to
so
get too much poorer.
yeah, that's why I'm not in favor of these sanctions, Tom. Military action, just like in Haiti, I know that was in our pipeline also. Military action is what's needed. And so to move in, to swiftly correct this. If this man, if the president is corrupt, Tom, he's done so bad, let the people decide the ballot box to fire him and to get rid of him. But
Well,
if that's who they voted in as their leader, then the military needs to respect that.
well, this is the challenge. When you have a political system in which you have a couple of very wealthy people who are typically in collusion and partnership with Western powers, then you have these so-called Western powers who are determining the outcome of elections in many of the African countries. And the reality of it is they can go around and throw money at folks in order to get votes, literally throw money at folks in order to get votes to determine the outcome, during the last week prior to the election. That doesn't particularly serve the interest of the people there because once the political powers make their decision as to who they want, then they just go through that person to get access to the resources that they want. And so when you have a Niger who is rich in uranium, who has gold, who has other resources that the Western powers want, or they want access to the resources in terms of building military bases under the guise of we're trying to prevent Al Qaeda and other outfits like that. It's all about access to the wealth of the
Yes,
resources
Tom.
there, but it has nothing to do with anything benefiting the
No.
people. And I think ultimately the answer is this. That's not just for Niger, but many other countries as well. Something has to change. When it's in Africa, they call it a coup. But when it happened in France, when it happened in the United, no, when it happened in the
Well,
New
it is
World,
happening in the United
they
States, but
called it a revolution. They called it a revolution when it happened in France, in Russia, in what we call the United States. It was a revolution of the people. When it happens in Africa, they call it a coup. Kind of interesting to me.
well, Tom, it's a revolution if you turn control over to a government that's responsible to the people, and
And
not
that's
just
the
keep the
problem.
and not keep the military in charge. But let me say this, Tom: there's a reason why the Russians and the Chinese are still there. They have embassies there. They have military presence there. I think we closed our consulate down. I'm not sure about our military base that we had there. That
Still
may
there.
still be operating,
They want
but
to protect that.
okay, so but the powers east and west from the United States, from Russia and China are still there for a reason, Tom, is that they want to make sure that the raw minerals that are exported to them continue to be exported. In fact, the Russians have already said, we don't want your money. You can pay your loan debts to us with gold. So just give us the raw gold. We'll you can satisfy your debt with gold. Um, so this is
Absolutely amazing.
yes, Tom. So once again, I mean, if the Western powers or the Eastern power, any power is in your country trying to cozy up with you, be very guarded and cautious, Tom. That they're not there to help you; they're there to help themselves.
And this is something that Malcolm said a long time ago. That's why we have to have an understanding and an interest in what's going on in Africa. Because, what's going on in Congo is also happening in Chicago. So at the end of the day, there is no difference between the exploitation that's happening here in the United States and what's happening in the African continent or in the Caribbean and in other countries. Really, it's all about controlling access to wealth and resources. And that's
Definitely on
why
the
it is in
resources,
our
Tom.
best interest to understand that the same thing that happens here happens globally when it comes to our brothers, sisters, cousins, and our ancestors.
Well,
Across
Tom, the
the
number
world.
one resource of Niger is uranium, like we
Correct.
mentioned, and there are only about maybe 10 countries around the world that can refine uranium to into rods where you can use it with a nuclear power plant. And So once again, they have no capacity to do that there. And this if I was the leader, this is something I would have been working on. We have the uranium. Let's spin it up and make it and refine it so we can sell the refined uranium that can be used to generate power, not the raw uranium that we got to sell for pennies on the pound, but yeah, it becomes worth millions for the pound on
And
pound.
then you got to buy it back.
If you want, yeah, if you want it back, you got to buy it
You
back
got to buy back
at the
just
at
like
the
they have to buy back their own money, Jimmy. What you got to understand for folks who don't understand this, the financial deposits of Niger and many other West African countries are in freaking France. Their
yes.
financial deposits are, and they've got to buy back their money with interest. It's crazy. People don't understand this. That's just like Jimmy. Me, someone said, you know what? I'm going to hold on to your money, Jimmy. And what you're going to do is when you need access to your money, you can buy your money back with interest.
Well, so Tom, there are a few countries that use American dollars as their currency, Panama being one of them. And
Correct.
you're right. When you don't control your currency, I mean, you give up a great deal of say over what happens, and when someone else controls your money and holding. And in this case, yeah, they use the French banking system. So at least Panama have their own banking system, just use our money. But yeah, when your banking and the money is
Exactly.
not controlled by your
Your,
country,
your minerals, your money, everything is in somebody else's
yeah,
hands.
you're in
And then
pretty bad shape.
they're selling your money back to you.
Uh, so hopefully one day, Tom, our African nations will, stop talking about coming together and actually do the right thing, come together and start using their enormous resources and learn how to refine it themselves and sell the refined product, not the raw product.
All that being said, those who are part of the military establishment and a lot of the people who support the military, they're not stupid. They understand what's going on and they need a change so that their country, hopefully within the next generation or so, will not be singing the same song as they are. So there is something to be said about the people who are supporting the military who said enough is enough.
Right.
Well,
That's what
Jimmy,
it's
with
going to
that
take,
being
Tom.
said, we are a little bit out of time, but we have had a great discussion and we will have to continue on.
Great discussion, Tom. So yes, any last words before we close the show out?
We want to thank everybody who's joined us today. We want to thank you for those who have supported us throughout this year, and we will continue to bring the content to you every week. We want to thank you for this evening, and we will see you next week at
See
Wednesday
you
night.
next week, same time, same bad channel.
Because if it's Wednesday night,